How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to another episode of Sip Talk. And my guest today, I cannot be more excited. I'm a big fan of his music. He's just an amazing person all around. One of my favorite rappers of all time, Saul, joins the show today. Saul, how are you?
What up? I'm good, man. Just another day in the life, and I'm just grateful for all the blessings that we have, and all the things that you have to appreciate.
All right, let's jump right into it. I first just want to talk about you as an artist being raised in Seattle. I personally listen to a lot of different hip hop artists from Seattle, and it's just such a unique sound. So
Mhm.
I just want to know how you originally got into music and how growing up in Seattle shaped your sound as well as kind of shaping you as a person.
Yeah, I would say that I first got into music because of just the stuff that my cousins and kind of my neighbors and older friends were listening to, and I would kind of overhear, or when they were not listening, I would grab their CD booklet and like put in the DMX and the Outkast and Snoop Dogg. And my brother had a bunch of old CDs that he had kind of moved on past or wasn't using. So like he didn't he had Doggy Style, and it was just collecting dust, and I would grab it and go put it in my CD player in my room. And so I got really into certain artists that way. And then, just watching music videos all the time, before social media, that was like the closest that we had to like a glimpse into who these artists were that we were listening to, like when you look back. And so it just had a big influence on me when I was like, we're talking like 8, 9. By the time I was 10, I was writing raps. And yeah, I just got really lucky. And somebody connected me with a engineer producer at the time who had a studio that wasn't too far away, and he had time and interest in kind of developing young artists, and so he kind of put me through boot camp. I just started doing weekly sessions and just like got exposed to the Seattle music community, just kind of one person at a time, one session at a time, playing shows, doing little talent shows and kind of battle type shows at different teen centers. And, I was already performing so I was in like middle school. So I'd like perform the middle school talent show or whatever, and just like I was already kind of in the studio while also kind of going through all those youthful kind of experiences. Um, and then by the time, fast forward, to college, I decided to go to UW because I wanted to stay in Seattle. I was already so invested in the music community. Like I already knew, there was something special already. And I had met, and gone to like early Blue Scholar shows, and just like I was a fan as well as an artist that was participating in it. And it felt like an important community to be a part of. And I still wasn't even 21, like to really be able to like, I remember for so long, for many years, not being 21 and not having access to certain shows, or when I would perform, I had to wait outside in the rain until my set, and I'd go on stage, and then they'd make me leave right away afterwards. Like, and like it was just super strict kind of liquor laws here in Washington. And so coming up through the all ages scene and trying to get opportunities, with some of the other people who were like promoting and like kind of doing their thing, but more in the 21 up scene. I was trying to prove myself as an MC, and just the scene felt so big, but at the time, like looking back, it was so small. But for me, it was just like the biggest deal to like finally meet, certain people. And then it grew into just being a family and a community, and like huge part of my experience growing up in Seattle.
Funny enough, the first concert I ever snuck into was one of yours. How about
Ah,
that?
that's amazing.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
performing in Boston 2016 during like a blizzard, and
Oh,
I
wow.
had to be 18 to get in. I was only 17, so I used my brother's ID to get in, and then my brother got in using his passport. So yeah,
Yeah,
comes full circle.
that was crazy. That was like in like it's like a Hard Rock Cafe, or not Hard Rock.
Yeah, it was at Hard Rock Cafe.
It was kind of a weird venue. Like the lights were kind of on, like you couldn't get it dark enough. They didn't want to turn off, the lights entirely for whatever reason. But it was, dude, that was a fun show. And I love those experiences because like we've worked so hard to get there, like touring in the winter. That was like kind of late fall, like going into winter, I believe.
No, it was actually I remember it was in April actually
Oh,
because
okay.
it was the same day as the March Madness final. So when I got back from school, everyone's like, "Did you see like the buzzer beating final?" And I'm just like, "No, no, I didn't." But it's Boston April, so we still had like a blizzard.
Crazy. Yeah, I remember it being so bizarre. But the point I was getting at is the fact that everyone shows up on a show like that, even if it is, like 100 people or whatever it was, like, which by the way, like for many, like some of my best shows and favorite shows have been like smaller crowds and like Boston, but by no means is a small city, but it's so far away from home, So to be out in Boston playing a show and to have people show up who fuck with the music and stuff was like the type of thing that it was so important for me as an artist to experience. And that's why touring is so important, especially these days when so much of the engagement that you're getting from the people who a lot of them really actually resonate with the art and they're going out of their way to send you messages and comments. And, it's all social media. It kind of just becomes numbers to you and just like these weird kind of, I mean, there's a whole conversation on social media and like the ego and how it's so dangerous for artists who are have such fragile egos, but those experiences of meeting people at your shows and like seeing them react to the songs and talking to them after the show and stuff is like really what grounds you as an artist, and really connects you to what your music is doing for people. And so, yeah, that was a super valuable experience. Um, yeah, first tour I ever went on Blue Scholars. The Grinch was opening up for the Blue Scholars, and I just rode along. I used to like skip my finals week. I like got permission from all my professors except for one, and I just like had to take an L. I don't remember what I did for that, but uh, I was out in the East Coast. Just the East Coast leg started in Minneapolis, and that was my first time ever hitting Boston and um, you know, um, Burlington, Vermont, and like places like that. And um, yeah, I wasn't even officially on the tour. Grinch just let me like jump on and do a couple verses with him every night. And that was my glimpse. Even not my own music, but watching Geo and like Sabzi interact with people and like seeing what their music was doing, for people and like how it was connecting. See the potential of that. It was a great model for me and everybody after me. And yeah, now it's like a multi-layered model. The more history that we build, the more artists that kind of build legacy people can learn from. People can learn from my journey and my path.
I'm happy you brought up Grinch and I'm happy you brought up social media because so me personally, as someone who listens to your music, I thought I first found your music on Spotify back probably maybe like 2014, 2015. But then I realized back when I was in like middle school and my friends and I would like burn CDs for one another and have like MP3 files and like trade them and
Oh, that.
whatever and different like songs on them and almost kind of like mixtapes.
Mhm.
And there's a song that my friend had on there that he just knew, but I didn't know the title. I didn't know the artist. All
Hmm.
I knew was the lyrics, and that song turned out to be All I Want to Do.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea who it was until I started listening to your music and I just like got down to like the
Same
single
exact-
section Spotify and then I heard that song and I was like, wait a second, and it all just clicked for me. And I thought that was just the funniest thing where I'm just like, I thought I've been listening to this dude for a year. Turns out I've been jamming to this random song on a mixtape my buddy made for me back when I was 13.
That's priceless too, man, because like those types of moments, there's different versions of them now. Now it's like you dancing to a song on TikTok and you don't even know who the artist is. It's like totally different context. But that was such a like interesting thing where it's like all you had were like these files and these CDs. Like maybe your friend wrote down the names of the songs on the little mix he made, or maybe just threw them in iTunes. And yeah, I still remember first time I went to a friend's house who had a CD burner and he had like LimeWire and he was like just downloading songs and it opened up the world. And so now people have that type of access. Not just the consumer, but the artists themselves are hearing each other and are obviously fans of music, and now like kind of being influenced by stuff that is culturally and physically so far away from them. And so there's some cool things that come from social media, but then there's also like a lot of other kind of toxic, has a very dark kind of toxic side to it as well.
So I want to get into your music specifically a little more. One aspect of your music that I really enjoy is that you have some songs that are just really fun to vibe to, and other songs that are kind of like deep and make you want to just close your eyes and think. I think your album Yours Truly had kind of that perfect blend of that.
Mm.
And so I was wondering, just as an artist, how do you kind of find that balance between songs that are going to make people like open their eyes and be happy and just vibe, but also songs that are sometimes sad and maybe even heartbreaking to listen to?
Mhm. Well, the short, like very kind of one side of the answer is like the decisions that you make when you're putting together, like you call it sequencing the album, and you have maybe you've recorded more songs than you're actually going to use, and you're kind of choosing and you're making a decision about what general energy and what kind of um mood you want to present, or even like statement that you want to present, or it's like a palette of emotions, like a color palette of different emotions, and you're like, well, we already have a song that is feels has this vibe to it, you know it has this kind of dark blue feeling or whatever, not to say I use colors every time, but it's like, you realize kind of, oh, you have a little bit more of this, and it's like, how do you feel about that? Like, maybe I want it to be more down tempo and slow. Like, there are albums like the Headspace Traveler, which leaned more into that cerebral kind of space, but still had songs like Ain't Gonna Stop, and like, you know, uh, I think there's always some sort of balance. It's never, for me, it's never 100 one way or the other. But to the other side of the answer to your question, is just having your balance in life be reflected in your balance in your artistic expression. So it's like, if you are finding balance and like certain level of like peace and calmness in your life, and just like, because it has its ups and downs and stuff, but if you're aware of that roller coaster and you believe in the next up when you're down, there's always going to be an element of hope in your music, even when it is like some of those more down tempo energies that we were talking about, which I think is an important ingredient in my music, and just like belief is hope, and like, no matter how bad something might be, so you can still talk about something negative, but not in a negative way. um, and so for me, I just strive for that balance in life. And then in my back of my head, I know that that's also the best thing for my art, because I think there's this glorified idea of an artist, and we all kind of romanticize with it in our head about like just going off into some like space, like you're off in a cabin and you just make art for the next 50 years, and whether you grow a big beard and you just go full art or whatever, and you just let go of the rest of life. Sometimes you neglect other relationships for the sake of your art. It happens in micro ways all the time in our daily lives as artists, I think, because you have this other thing that you're in love with outside of, the people in your life. And for me, I've always been very aware of that, and wanting to make sure to never let that pull me too far in that direction. So I really try to prioritize, my personal relationships, life experiences, whether that be travel or just kind of just doing things in life. And like right now I'm taking a photography class, and I have photography homework, has nothing to do with music. And now there's 20-25 hours in the week where I'm not thinking about my music stuff, and I'm not even looking at social media, because I'm in the dark room. And I think that's a part of an effort of just like maintaining that balance.
So you brought up songs that have this element of hope. You also brought up the Headspace Traveler. So the first thing that comes to my mind is the song "See the End,"
Mm.
and it's personally one of my favorite songs because of how powerful it is, because of all the raw emotions that the listener feels. They feel heartbroken, anger, but there's also this kind of sense of hope at the end. You performed that song at protests
Mm.
during the racial justice protests over the summer following the death of George Floyd. So I just wanted to first ask about the song "See the End" and what the original kind of thought process and feelings you were feeling when writing that song kind of inspired you to write it. Because one thing I've noticed with the song is that the heartbreaking fact about the song is it's kind of timeless in a way, that song came out in 2016 and here we are in 2020, and the message still resembles, which is heartbreaking, but you still kind of have that sense of hope at the end of the song too.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's just a reflection of like 100% honesty and like vulnerability in the music. And you don't tap into it every time that you sit down and write or record, but when you're at your most true kind of state, in your flow state, and you've really opened up, your music will always have that really raw element. And people, it's human, it's not produced, it hasn't been overwritten by Justin Bieber's writers, who then get send it to them and they write, and then the reference singer sings it, and then Justin Bieber, like it's like directly from the heart. And so for me, that was a part of the process of the writing, and just feeling so strongly about the things that I feel. And having been brought up a certain way, and also educated in a certain way where I'm critical of certain things, and I've learned a lot about certain things, and a lot of like bad things about history, and things that we just means that like those are things that we need to address and work on. And so whenever I have an opportunity, whether it was in my social studies class or if it's on a song, like I'm giving a reflection of like my perspective and the things that I'm observing, without always hoping to not come across like I'm lecturing or like that I know all the answers, because by no means do I. And I've always kind of wanted to approach every conversation that way, because I think you kind of turn people off, and people don't really hear you when you come at something like you know everything, and no matter what they say or whatever. So there's an openness in, I think, that I have in my music, and an honesty that I feel like is approachable, and so people can find a way to relate to it, even if they, don't look like me, or they haven't experienced something. And a lot of stuff I talk about are not things that I've experienced, but things that I observe. And so I think that song, I just tapped into that like 100%. Yeah, for me, it's one of my favorite songs as well, if not my favorite.
And kind of going off of that, so this idea of openness and honesty, and not trying to go at things like you know the answer, but trying to find a solution. So when you're helping lead these protests in your own community in Seattle, do you kind of use that same energy, that same feel, where you're seeing just a very diverse group of people? It's not just Black people protesting, it's old people, young people, white people, Hispanics, in every city across the country protesting racial injustice. You kind of tap into that same energy of I I don't have the answers, but we can work together to find solutions to solve these problems.
Mhm. Well, firstly, I there's like a really strong and dope cohort of people who have been organizing in Seattle for many years, and really stepped up like during this uprising to kind of give us a direction, and listed demands and focus, and try to channel the energy so many people had and brought to the streets. So I wasn't involved in the organizing in that way, but I was involved, and I was actively wanting to engage and be as useful as I can be in whatever that meant. And so like there was a event that was less of a protest and more of a gathering, and like a rally, and still talking about the same issues, but also having certain conversation and having a lot of music performers rather than just speakers. And so they asked me to perform, and I did a few songs that kind of spread the energy. And to answer your question about connecting with people, it's the same thing about any set. Even if I'm doing something and I only have one song, or it's I'm on tour and I have an hour and a half, I'm thinking about how am I gonna meet people halfway and bring them along on that performance, on that journey with me. Like, so I would finish with a song like "See the End," so that third verse kind of just rings out, and it's like my kind of final statement. And before that, you can take people like multiple places. And so I approach any public speaking like in that way. I want to connect and bring people along and show them, what I hope to show them, shed light on what I hope to shed light on. And they can observe it and think about it, process it in their own way. They don't have to just like take my words. You don't have to take my word for it, type of thing.
One last thing I want to tap into from this past summer. You did a virtual live show in support of the Seattle Artist Relief Fund. What can you tell us about what into that performance logistically with COVID? I'm also really curious about,
Mhm.
and also the cause that the show supported.
Well, it started as a phone conversation between me and my friend Ben Zadie, who is a singer, songwriter, like multi instrumentalist, like awesome artist.
I saw him on your tour.
Yeah, right. He played Boston because he was going to Harvard at the time, or no, he had finished and he was back visiting. But yeah, so yeah, he's like a poetic genius and really just a sweet person who I connect with on many levels beyond the music. And also when we think about kind of using our platforms and trying to organize in certain ways, he's really kind of a union thinker in that way, where he's always trying to think about mutual aid. And COVID would hit and I had a tour cancel and he kind of derailed his plans, and we were just on the phone processing and talking about it and like what to do next. And we just like we're talking about live streaming, and like I believe that live streaming is not going anywhere. It's only going to become more and more of a thing. And so we were talking about that, and then our minds just instantly went into like, okay, how can we engage other people in our community so it's not just about us, and we can provide a platform for some other artists who have different types of fan bases or different levels of exposure, give some people some cool exposure. And then it kind of was turning into like, well, we should raise money for something. This isn't like about making money, so to speak, even though we baked into the whole idea the whole time that we're going to pay all the artists performing, because it was turning into a fundraiser for the arts. That was the beginning of the conversation. What are we going to do for ourselves and for our peers and for the artists that are going to struggle throughout this period and after this period? This is right when it hit, so that we're thinking about now, like next fall, like when people are still not touring and there's a second wave, like we're really trying to think ahead. And so it ended up turning into like 3 or 4 months, like because we kept thinking about the idea getting bigger and bigger, and we brought KXP on as a partner, and they presented it on their YouTube with like 2 million subscribers, and we raised like upwards of $25,000 for Seattle Artists Focus Fund, that was focused on and is still going on BIPOC artists, and focus in Seattle, and just giving people aid. And yeah, it was a great experience. It was really cool to work in a team. We had to answer your question about the logistics, many Zoom calls and all sorts of stuff like that. And then only a couple days of like socially distanced location based stuff, like where we had to go check out our streaming location, and then we had to set up and stream. But the performances were all pre-recorded, and the artists recorded them on their own. And I had kind of collected some supplies. Some of the artists wouldn't have a mic, or they didn't have a good camera, so I would kind of like go drop off a GoPro and like camcorder, and then they would get this footage together. And some people edited their own. Like people got super experimental with their different performances, and really everyone came at it from a different angle. And that was one of my favorite parts about it. Like Perry Paints, like Blue. I don't know if you got a chance to see that part, but it's on KXP now. All the performances KXP has been rolling out separately as their own little in studios, and everybody got some dope, you know, content from it. They're incentivized. I gave them a deadline, what every artist needs and also hates. And so everybody kind of just created these like dope 25-minute performances. It's a super dope lineup. And I secretly love putting lineups together. Like whenever I would do a tour or a big show in Seattle, I really got a lot of enjoyment of kind of curating who the openers were going to be and stuff. So with this festival, it was fun to kind of put together a whole experience. It was like 4 or 5 hours. We averaged, I think, like five, what was it, 20, either 250 or 500 viewers at a time. But like the whole time, that adds up to like that, tens of thousands of viewers. So yeah, it was really successful. It was cool.
Look, we all know that Saul is a man of music, but he's a man of many other interests.
Huh.
One mutual interest that we have is soccer. You're a big Arsenal guy. So, Saul, I need to know your Gunners. Where do you think they're going to finish in the table in the EPL? And do you think they can win Europa?
I think we always can win Europa, because it's all about like, because we go through these really hot streaks. you know. But we can't really pull it out for any extended period of time. The type of stuff that'll get you top four, in the Premier League, and we haven't done too well in the Europa League the last few years. I think we made it to the final, we made it to the semifinal, and we made it to the knockout round. Like we got knocked out last year pretty early. Um, but I think we always have a shot at that. But we are like Arsenal fans have this high standard, where it's like I come from Seattle where I'm used to losing and I still love my team even if they're losing type thing. But I just want to see them trying. And that's the problem I have with like the Mariners and stuff, where it's just like we haven't made the playoffs since 2001. Like there's like 20-year-old people who are alive, like who are not have never been alive during the Mariners, even in the playoffs. And they don't give a fuck. So uh Arsenal, the owners right now are kind of cheap. They don't spend, these days you kind of just got to spend money in order to get guarantees, investments on your stuff. But one of the things that I like about Arsenal is that you also, especially because of COVID, like it kind of contradicts my past statement, which is mostly true. It's like, oh, you want to guarantee like amazing striker, a world-class striker is going to cost you money. Everyone saw Van Dijk, crazy good center back, going to cost you big money. But the developing through the academy is the answer. You look at these teams like Southampton and like some of these French teams that are always selling to like the bigger teams and just, making profit, which again, the Arsenal owners care about profit. But also like the key is retaining those players long enough so that you can kind of reap the benefits of your investment and just picking out really strong youth. And it's a kind of a win-win because winning is a process. It takes time. That's the problem. Arsenal fans are impatient, but we're learning patience because we have no choice right now. But fans are always like going to be partial and have soft spots for homegrown players. Like someone who came from the academy and like you want to see them do well. And so even when they go, because players go through hot streaks and dry spells, it's like, are they in form or are they not? Like, and everybody, unless you're Messi or Ronaldo or Zlatan or something, everybody kind of has these little periods where they're not in form, and the fans will stick it through with those homegrown players. And so they give them less stick, and in general, I think it like creates a better like vibe, and like because you're building community, you're trying to build community around your team. So, I think that's important, kind of investing in your homegrown players. We don't need to have a model like Southampton. I was just showing like it's for what they want. It works hella well. Like they put some of these smaller teams put way more into their academy and they get better youth recruitment than, or as par with some of these really big clubs, But yeah, I don't know that damn, I just kind of went all over about what Arsenal has done, what it needs to do. But to answer your question about top four, I feel like we need to have another big transfer window in January, and then that's the only time I could say yes. But it's I would say probably less likely than likely, especially because some of the kind of big six clubs that are not in form right now, like Man City and Man U, they're gonna go through hot streaks. Like it's a guarantee at some period. They just have too much talent to just completely shit the season, and so they're gonna be in the mix. But we have a lot of like I think the middle table has gotten stronger and probably closer because you're not always going to have a Liverpool that just breaks away like last year. So like even Liverpool is not now just kind of amongst the other clubs, and some of those clubs might stick around a little bit longer, a little bit higher than they usually do. Like I feel like Aston Villa, it could definitely finish top six. I don't know about top
Oh
four.
God, I hope not. They need to go away. You're not familiar with my hatred of Aston Villa. Like
Really?
I despise them. Well, it goes back to when I was a young lad playing FIFA 10 on my PS2, which I've been doing for a good 10 years now anyway. But I'm just a young struggling manager of Wolverhampton, and I'm playing Villa, and they injure my best player, so I have a bad season, and then I get fired. So I have to build my way back up. But I build my way back up to Man City. I'm the coach of Man City, but guess what? Playing Villa, injure my best player, and I end up getting fired.
Damn.
Now, oh, you think my hatred stops here? No, Saul. because fast forward to maybe 2 years ago, and I'm replaying these old FIFA games on my PS2, and I have my own created team. And guess who I stumble upon then? Villa. And guess what they do? Keep injuring my best players. Is that an irrational hatred for a real team from a PS2 game? Maybe. But you know what? I hate them. I can't stand them.
All
And they
right.
need to go away.
Okay. So I have two thoughts. One is, yeah, that's sports. There'll be random reasons why you like and don't like teams. So it's totally valid. But it makes me question what is going on with the coding in the game. Like, because it's totally possible that like one of the coders or like some of the guys, at EA, FIFA, or whatever, are Villa fans, and they'll just create this little fluke in the coding where like they do that. Like there's a like in NBA Jam or one of these kind of like old school like Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo games. Uh, there was like a this is just a scenario. I don't remember what team he was rooting for, but there was like a Celtics fan. He was like one of the creators of the game or one of the coders. And he made it so if you were playing against the Lakers and the Lakers took a buzzer beating shot, it would always miss. So if the game ever came down to a buzzer beater, it was literally impossible for the Lakers to make the buzzer beater, even if it was like a layup or whatever.
I mean, the Celtics have to stay on top. I mean, I would say that's just realistic game coding.
Yeah, so there's probably a Villa fan over there that's screwing you over and wouldn't take it personally. But I feel you though, and I'm impartial to them. I thought that I like the keeper that came from Arsenal that they picked up. I think it was a really good signing for them, and I like Jack Grealish as a player. But there's a lot of good teams. My point is like Everton is a lot better this year than they were,
Well,
and
these are not your father's Everton. Let me tell you, they are fully entrenched in the mix.
yeah, so it's gonna be. I think it'll be a entertaining year. Although I'm curious to see what happens. I feel like there's gonna be another wave with COVID, and they're gonna have to decide or find some sort of way whether they're gonna be able to stick the season out again. Because if cases go way up and you're having star players that are going out with COVID and shit like that, it's no good. It just won't work. So I'm hoping that because I did miss soccer. I was watching old soccer games on YouTube, like whole games, like from the World Cup and like you know, 99 or 2000, whatever, like just kind of just like how you were going back on your PlayStation. So yeah, I think people need their sports for better or for worse. It's a big thing for people.
I watched when Bundesliga was the first legit league that came back. I watched way too much Bundesliga. Like I had all of Schalke's lineup just memorized in my head. I probably shouldn't be going on my Villa rants. I've only known you for like a half hour, and that was probably really weird. But thank you for sticking with me. Let's talk some Seattle sports.
Okay.
The Seattle Kraken, new NHL team. Do you have like high expectations because of expansion teams like the Vegas Golden Knights who had a really good run? Or do you kind of expect to just have a little lull period at the beginning and maybe they can work their way up to being a legitimate Seattle team, great community team, big contender?
I have no expectations about the quality of the team. I don't know how they're gonna go about that or like, what the people in charge are doing and with the draft and stuff like that. I'm not up on it. But that's the type of stuff that comes with time. Like, once you start catching some games and you start feeling some invested, I think with sports, you have to kind of build that with fans. But Seattle are with contrary to what a lot of people would probably say, Seattle sports fans are some of the best sports fans. Like, I mean, the Seahawks goes without question, like one of the craziest stadiums in the NFL. And even the Sonics and Mariners like have had the good periods with the Key Arena and the Kingdom and stuff like that. And like that's a cultural thing in Seattle. Granted, Seattle's changed a lot since those years. Like most people live in Seattle don't even know what the Kingdom is or was probably. That's a whole other conversation. But I think people will support them for sure. I think it'll be tough if the games start and people can't go to the games. I'm looking forward to just having the option of like easily going to an NHL game because I've heard that hockey games are hella fun and I've never been to a hockey game. Like never had an opportunity to like go to a Thunderbird. It never happened for some reason, but I regret that and I would love to start going to hockey games. So I think there's a lot of people who probably agree with that. And so yeah, I think they'll do well and I hopefully makes it all I just hope it makes it more likely that the Sonics come back somehow. You know what I mean? Like if they can share an arena or if they can, figure something out, with all that bullshit. But like Seattle deserves a basketball team. I think we're a basketball town more than any other sport, to be frank, when it comes to like our culture and our youth and the professional athletes that have came out of the city.
So it's going to offer this as a hypothetical. No championships for 10 years. And for you, including Arsenal, no hardware for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But Seattle gets the Sonics back. Would you take it?
Yeah, I take the Sonics back for sure.
Oh, wow.
There's 32 teams in the league. Like it depends on the sport, but it's like you can't win every year, and you might go a decade without winning. But you didn't say we couldn't go to the Super Bowl. If I get to enjoy a playoff run into February, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like I understand you don't win them all, and it makes the wins that more sweet. So after that 10 years, they'll probably all win, and then that'll be the best. And I'll maybe have a kid at that point. I'll be taking the games. So it's like sounds like a good deal to me, So that's my answer.
All right. I need to talk about your kittens because they're clearly the star of your social media accounts.
Yeah.
What are their names and why all of a sudden did you decide to get two kittens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're asleep right now. Surprisingly, kittens sleep a lot more than you would think. But when they're not asleep, they're definitely up to something always.
Always.
Yeah, so their names are Sada and Minou, which is French for cat. And it's my aunt has always named her cat that, just like very kind of dry name. Every generation she gets a Minou. And her cat died recently and she's just too bummed out to get another one. So I'm carrying the name on. And then Sada, I just like the name. And I've wanted a pet for some years now. I mean, I've always been a pet person growing up as a dog person. We had family dogs at different period. And I could never have a cat because my mom was allergic. She is allergic. So, she probably won't be visiting my spot anytime soon. And, she's not crazy allergic, but we could never have one at her home where she's living and sleeping and stuff. And so when the opportunity kind of came and the cats kind of just fell in my lap, almost somebody, was giving up some cats. I was even able to help a friend adopt the other two because there's 4 in the litter. So between me and my friend, we have all 4 of them. That's kind of cool that we can set up play dates and stuff. Kind of once they all have their shots and COVID cools down. And yeah, when I was thinking about what kind of pet to get, I was like, man, my lifestyle low key might fit a cat better than it fits a dog. I love a dog, but I probably love a dog more when I'm at a different phase in life. I have an apartment. I don't have like a house with a yard, and I have a certain lifestyle I think works with cats. And then because I never had one, they're hella interesting to me. So I'm like learning, I'm just like observing them all the time. And like, you can't predict them in the same way that you can kind of figure out a dog,
All right. One last thing before I let you go, because unfortunately your tour with Sam Lacho was canceled. I have to know, are there any plans for once everything, whether that be next year after, whenever, to bring that tour back and running? And also, could you maybe throw Travis Thompson on that bill? Because that would just be a stacked lineup.
Yeah, that would be dope. At least even like to do something in Seattle with like a bunch of artists. Once we can perform together, we should just all like come together and do just like one big ass concert before they can cancel it again. But obviously when it's safe. And yes, to answer your question, when it's safe, I and Sam, we specifically have plans to do this tour and even add cities to it. And I'm sure like he'll be super anxious to get on the road as will I. So, I went back to Europe and did shows in Europe for the first time just like last year. And so I can't wait to get back to Europe. And he and I, it's a moving target with COVID. Like, first he was like, oh, are we going to be able to reschedule for the spring? And then it was like, oh, wait, next fall. And then some agencies and venues are like saying, well, it might not be till spring 2021, and so it's like, it's a fluid thing, but we have every intention to fulfill this tour and to just get on the road like never before. Cause I mean, it's one of the best places and it's obviously now we just appreciate it and it's that much more valuable.
Well, there's a Hard Rock Cafe in Boston. I'd love to have you back. I know that. Before I let you go, this is the time of the episode right at the end where we just say plug away. So where can people find you, your music, what are you up to? Maybe some photography projects, just plug away.
Yeah. So I mean, all my merch and music is at my website, Saul Says, SOLSAYS.com. But you can just search Saul on social media, and usually I pop up, if not first up there, but there's a few. I have to compete with the beer and the sun. But I remember I celebrated on when I finally made it to the first page of Google. When you would type Saul, I was at like the 20th page for so many years, just trying to get up there. So you can find me out there, and I've been making music for a long time, and I have a lot of music that I've been working on. So the catalog is deep, and you can dig into it and you can expect a lot more. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I appreciate the platform of podcasting and kind of oral history and just telling stories and just connecting. And I'm looking forward to listening back.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Saul. It's great having you on.
All right, man. Stay in touch.